Hey, 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 women's basketball fans. We are back with another episode of Tempestade Talk. And I have a special surprise for you. And I'm going to play that right now.
You have three people who are selfless like that, three people who are dangerously disciplined like that, and you have a coach that also embodies all of those characteristics. You can expect good basketball.
I love interacting with the fans. I'm excited for them to cheer for us because it's hell when you come here. I even welcome people that could be skeptical because it's new.
There's going to be a standard of excellence and discipline in everything that we do.
The Pacific Northwest, this area, how passionate they are. It's culture everywhere, but it's great culture here. That's what I want to be a part of, to compete for a championship. That's everybody's goal. And I think it's just how we go about things and habits that we create. I want to be around winners that'll help us get closer to that.
And that's what the fans can expect. And we're going to have some fun.
Welcome to another episode of Tempestade Talk. Erica L. Ayala, joined by Roberta Rodriguez. Roberta, how you doing?
I am doing all right. How about you?
I am, this is my second Seattle specific podcast, technically third of the day. So I'm doing all right. Making it. We did a Gotta Get Up podcast for New York Liberty fans and had Gigi Spear alongside Brian Florentin. But now we're ready to talk some Seattle Storm. But similarly to what we did on the last episode of Gotta Get Up, we are definitely going to be talking about the expansion draft and thinking of players that the Seattle Storm might want to protect. We're also going to talk about Juwel Lloyd and play some snippets from her exit interviews. I mean, Juwel is the consummate professional, but there have been a lot of things, or I should say, there have been a lot of things swirling in the women's basketball space regarding everything from her performance with the Seattle Storm to with the Olympic team. And the first clip, actually, I think will maybe give a little insight to what Juwel, was dealing with, just as a reminder. But we're going to start things off a little bit different. We're going to do our first quarter, second quarter, and then go into halftime, which will be our conversations around women's basketball. But this is a little bit of a cheat because it's a little bit of both. But from the eye of the Seattle Storm, pun intended, we're going to talk about what is happening overseas. And Roberta, no one better to talk about that than you. So take it away. What do we need to know as those following and invested in Seattle Storm news about what is happening overseas?
Yeah, so first off, I'm very excited for this episode. I'm always excited for Tempestade Talk episodes. But today we're talking about some topics that are just very important for the future, not only of the Seattle Storm, but the league on its own, especially considering everything that we have coming forward. But let's start from the start. And talk about overseas off-season. There are 6 Storm players who are playing overseas. We have Ezzy. She is with Czech Republic. She's with Praha in Czech Republic. We also have Gabby Williams, who is playing for Fenerbahce in Turkey. We have Semi with Bendigo in Australia. Of course, we have Nika also in Turkey. Jordan is playing in New Zealand right now, but she is coming back for Athletes Unlimited. And Joyner Holmes is in Greece. But and we also have Skylar Diggins Smith playing Unrivaled. And Mercedes in China. So lots of players stateside, some players overseas. I do think that it's of course we have to keep an eye on Nika, who actually we had an update on her situation. She had her surgery and she's recovering, but that's definitely going to be an ongoing situation, and we're gonna learn more of the process. It's going to be a road for her. Players are not only going to be playing basketball, some of them are going to rest. Neka and Ezzy are supposed to meet up in Australia. We know that Neka has a lot of work this off season with the CBA stuff, a lot of action overseas and stateside, but definitely unrivaled. It's gonna have some exciting storm action with Skylar and Juwel.
For sure. And again, we're going to be talking about Juwel Lloyd in this episode of Tempestade Talk. I hope you enjoyed our intro video. Gotta Get Up has an intro video, so we had to put one together. Some of you who've been a part of our Patreon posse for Black Rosie Media or in our Slack community have probably seen that video before. We just doctored it up a little bit and are going to be using that moving forward. But thank you, Ronnie. Thank you, Daniel, for popping through here. Again, this is Tempestade Talk. We are going to be talking about the Seattle Storm. And we started our first quarter with a run through of where some of the Storm players from last year and last season, 2024, where they will be abroad. And some of them, as you mentioned, will be competing in Unrivaled or Athletes Unlimited. Once we get closer to those seasons, we'll talk about those leagues in a little more detail. We do know that if you are not already, you should probably subscribe to Unrivaled on social media. They launched a new YouTube channel and we'll be having some goodies there. They also have a newsletter, which is how I know about some of these things. I'm not going to give away all the secrets in the newsletter. You should definitely join our Slack community where we'll start breaking that down a little bit more. But you ran through what's going on or what the Seattle Storm are doing overseas. And we do hope a speedy recovery, to Nika Mule.
Yeah.
Really unfortunate. We know she didn't get playing time with the Seattle Storm this year. And she was really great talking about that. Just like we did last year for Gotta Get Up. We're going to spend and dedicate at least one quarter of each of our off-season episodes to one player. So we're really going to get a deep dive, and we'll talk about Nika a little bit later again. But today we're going to talk about Juwel. But before we do that, we're going to get into our second quarter, Roberta, because again, outside of the lottery, which the draft lottery is coming up here, this is not something that will impact the Seattle Storm, nor will it impact directly the New York Liberty, because those players are not lottery teams this year, but it is something happening in the WNBA. Again, we'll talk about that. We moved women's basketball news to our halftime, just trying something a little different. So we get you the Storm information first. So we don't have to really talk about that, even though that is coming up this season. We also know, and we'll talk about this a little bit in halftime, there have been some coaching changes, but again, not something that impacts the two teams that we cover here at Black Rosie Media, the Seattle Storm and the New York Liberty, at least not that we know of as of yet. So that means we can get into the conversation that I think a lot of teams want to have in the offseason, Roberta, and that is who will be protected in the expansion draft. Now, before we get into who we think will be protected from Seattle, just a few things. The expansion draft is going to happen early in December. We also know that the teams are going to be asked to submit 6 different players that they want to protect in the expansion draft, maximum of 6 players. Those lists will not be made public. So we will not know who Seattle protects. I know, I'm totally anti that. I've been messing around on Blue Sky getting acclimated, and I know some of my WOSO or women's soccer people are over there who've been through a lot of expansion drafts recently, and we always get the lists. We know who's protected and we know who's not. I don't really understand why the league is not releasing the names. That just kind of seems a little silly to me.
It sounds shady. That's what it sounds. I know that that's not the vibe that they want to give, but it's just, it's not. Nah,
Yeah, I'm not here for it.
no.
Definitely not here for it. But we're not the commissioner, and neither is NICA, at least not yet. So we can't do anything about that. Hey, Moni, thank you so much for your interest. I'm gonna place that link in the chat, and you can also find it on our social media links. Again, we're really trying out Blue Sky, but we're also on Twitter
Hmm.
and of course on YouTube. But join us on Slack. We would love to have you. And there is a specific channel dedicated to Tempestade talk in our community here. But of course, you're welcome to join any of the other channels as well. Okay, let's get into it, Roberta. I did this again with Brian Florentin, and Gigi Spear was our guest on Gotta Get Up. So I'm going to just run through. You are our expert. I would love to hear who you think is absolutely 100%, no questions asked, being protected by Noel Quinn and company in the expansion draft or ahead of the expansion draft.
Well, if we're talking, there's so many layers to this conversation, but just like let's hit it like just direct. I would say that they have to focus on the core four. So they would, I think that they should protect, of course, Skylar, Neka, Juwel.
See, I said 51 and you go all in on 4. I like we got a whole quarter. We got to talk about this. All right. You already kind of you spoiled it a little. That's all right. I'm teasing a little. But let's talk one by one. Why do you say Gabby Williams?
Because she brings that defensive prowess to the team, and she is very consistent with her play. She's a great scorer. She's a great scorer. She's great on the defense, and she's also very athletic. Her athleticism has she has stood out because of her athleticism. So she is a well-rounded player who any team that she stays on, that she is on, is gonna benefit greatly. But I think that the Storm really needs the the Swiss Army knife, the French Army knife that that she is now.
I agree with you 100%. Gabby Williams was a really exciting player to bring in with regard to, after the All-Star and Olympic break. She made an immediate impact, and I think probably she could have been integrated even earlier. Like, I know there was a little bit of a feeling out period, which is completely natural. And I think we just saw that, she was able to bring some dynamic, high pace to this Seattle Storm team. And that's the way that this team wanted to play. Remember, they played Las Vegas. They played Las Vegas late in the regular season and then turned around and played them after they had that quick road trip to Phoenix. And part of the reason in that last regular season game, you and I were both there, but also, although they did not overcome the Las Vegas Aces in the playoffs, the moments where they were able to get close or even, to stretch a lead, it was because of pace. And, I think Gabby Williams brings that. And I think where you were probably going to go, and it leads or it connects to what we talked about in the first segment in the first quarter, is that Gabby has also been, and we played this on the last episode, we've talked about this again, very much in the Slack community, because I was in Paris talking to Gabby a lot about prioritization. There is a path forward where Gabby, once again, will be asked and will make a decision regarding the WNBA. And she's been very clear, very transparent. So if you and I know this, Roberta, we can pretty much guarantee that the Seattle Storm also know this. Prioritization is something that the WNBA wants to see. That means having players ready to go in market when the season starts. Now, on the one hand, We completely understand that. And I think this offseason will be telling, not just because the CBA is in negotiation, but you've already mentioned it. There's Athletes Unlimited. There's going to be Unrivaled. There are just more opportunities for athletes to be at home, even places like at the Seattle Storm, where they have their own dedicated facilities.
Yep.
So these players don't necessarily need to go overseas with the same urgency that we've seen in the past, with the exception of players like Gabby Williams, who call overseas from the United States home. And so it's not necessarily talking about our Canadian friends, our friends to the north. So we're going to kind of clump North America together, because more often than not, the Canadian national team players or people living in Canada have been able to figure out how to make the WNBA season work. But we are talking about players like Gabby Williams, who plays for the French national team. We had great quotes in our Slack channel during the Olympics. I spoke to Emma Miesemann multiple times over, and we posted in our pop-up newsletter about what Emma Miesemann had to say. So with all of that said, are there any reservations, do you think, if you're the front office of the Seattle Storm, in committing long-term to Gabby Williams, knowing that she might not commit as long-term to the organization moving forward?
I think that at this point, and considering everything that Gabby has said, I believe that if the price is right, she would stay. And it all depends on probably the new CBA. It depends on a lot of what is actually, like, sometimes out of the control, out of the Storm's control.
Yeah.
Because if they core her, then she would the offer would have to be the Supermax, right? So that might be an incentive. But like we talked in previous episodes, when she plays, she has already said that she makes more money overseas, but also she makes that money in euro, which is worth more than dollars. So I think that financially for her, playing overseas is still is more beneficial than playing here. But depending on the changes that come up with everything going on in the WNBA, she might reconsider. And there are so many variables that should be factored in, with everything that we've already talked about regarding the, just what has been going on with the Storm. I feel like for the Storm, that would make sense. I'm not sure Gabby would want something like that. From everything that we have heard, everything that she has talked to us about, I don't see her committing. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And you mentioned the Supermax. This is something I actually just wrote about because, we might talk a little bit more about this, but Kelsey Mitchell announcing again, because she said this before, but that she plans to, go through free agency. So the Supermax, numbers are fresh in my mind. It's like just a little bit over 241K. So for Kelsey Mitchell, that's actually not that much of an increase. But another thing though about the Supermax, Roberta, is that you can use that tag one time
Exactly.
for a player. So if you use that on Gabby Williams in 2025, then you don't have the ability to do that again. So just something to consider.
Yeah, and Juwel made the Supermax this year. So I feel like the Storm has a lot to figure out this offseason with all the moving pieces, and they not only have their moving pieces, they also have to consider all of the other ones that upcoming.
Yeah, exactly. Because we talked about it a little bit on the last episode, but it sounds like some people might not be in the future vision of the Seattle Storm, because there was a feeling. I mean, I played that intro clip, and so much of that was Nneka talking about the discipline and the mindset of this team. And it's no surprise, Noelle Quinn has said it, other players, including Skylar Diggins-Smith, have said it, that this team fell short of meeting the expectation on the discipline side. And again, we'll talk about where we feel, if at all, Juwel Lloyd falls into that conversation. But you mentioned 3 other players, so let's go through them. I really think that if you're talking about Gabby Williams and you're talking about pace for the Seattle Storm, Skylar Diggins-Smith is right there.
100%.
And she absolutely is on my list. She was the person I listed in our rundown right after Gabby Williams, because I really think they're a 1-2 punch on the ability. And honestly, I think where this Seattle Storm team needs to go to future proof.
I agree. I 100% agree. Yeah. I agree. And I think that if the Storm manages to, the thing, like, Skylar can't be cored, but she does have one more year in her contract. And she, if I had to choose the one player, considering the ones that they already have contracts, then that would be Skylar Diggins-Smith. That would have been the best answer to the other question. So I think that, first off, Skylar is committed to the WNBA, especially now with her playing Unrivaled. She's a sure thing to be here. Gabby, we still have that uncertainty if she's staying in the US or not, but Skylar is. She said with all the words that she sees herself as the team leader, and she's very comfortable in that role, which I love. I aim to have like her confidence someday and her leadership abilities. She commands like respect. She doesn't even have to ask for it. And that's something that this team needed. I know that Juwel was the team leader last year, but she was the leader in terms of performance. When it comes to off the court, I feel like Skylar brings that, and the Storm needs it. And on top of that, she is an amazing player.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you said there. I think, again, we're going to talk about Juwel, and in a clip that we have, she actually alludes to some of her leadership. So I'll leave some of my comments on that respect. But I mean, last episode we talked about how the personality that Skylar Diggins-Smith sometimes can clash with the personality or the expectation that exists in a place like Seattle. But that's not a Skylar Diggins-Smith problem, in my opinion. No. And I do think that she is a person moving forward. I just want to go back to Moni and her question, because we mentioned Kelsey Mitchell. Can Kelsey Mitchell go through free agency if Indiana courts her? The answer is yes. So what happens if Kelsey Mitchell has made it very clear that she plans to explore free agency? So the Indiana Fever could core or slap that core designation on Kelsey Mitchell. In my understanding, Roberta, is that what that would do is it doesn't guarantee that Kelsey Mitchell takes that core offer. But what it does guarantee is that the Indiana Fever have first dibs effectively. She kind of becomes a hybrid RFA once they extend the core designation. Then Kelsey Mitchell has to respond. She can respond in the affirmative or in the negative. Like she can dismiss the offer, but by offering the designation of core, that gives Indiana first dibs on negotiating with Kelsey Mitchell. That being said, if she does not accept that offer, she can still sign with Indiana. She could, and that might, again, given that it's a small, actually, let me pull this up because I was looking at it earlier. Again, the article is in our Slack community. If you're there, I posted it earlier. But if I I'm looking at her hoop stats. And I know this is not Seattle Storm related, but we're actually going to break this down. So it's kind of good too. So Kelsey Mitchell made $212,000. Again, the Supermax is like 241.6 something. I don't know. Let's just call it an even 242, right? So, she's it. I think that Kelsey Mitchell is worth more than roughly $30,000 increase. especially given that she has stayed loyal to Indiana. So I could see a world in which she's extended that offer, she dismisses the offer, and still returns to Indiana. I think that's very plausible. But if she doesn't take the supermax, then that means that she can make more than the 242. Just like I said, just to make it an even number, she could make more than that. I guess over the time of her contract.
Yeah, it's like it's very similar to what happens in international soccer, where basically the team owns the player contract and it's the team that negotiates. So if, let's say, the Seattle Storm wants to bring Kelsey Mitchell, they have to talk to the Indiana Fever, and the Indiana Fever is like, no, we're gonna match your offer.
Yep.
So I think that it's very smart of her to go for that. You know, she can make more money with the Seattle Storm or another team. I mean, it depends also, but I think I believe she should explore free agency, and she also should. I think it would be good for her because everyone saw what she did this season, and you know, I think it will benefit of her to go to another place.
Yeah, I agree. I also wrote in my article for CBS Sports today that another element, and I think it's somewhat being overlooked, but she had a great essay in coordination with Players Tribune that dropped today. And she talked about in more detail than I've ever heard her asked. I mean, that includes me. I don't cover Indiana Fever generally speaking. Obviously, they had a lot of coverage. We all know why. We don't need to go into that. But Kelsey, I know that she lost her father. Her father died suddenly ahead of the WNBA season. And it wasn't something that she was withholding, but also wasn't something that she was talking about. In her essay, she talked about that. And in my article, I wrote, and unfortunately, I know this from personal experience, but you know, when you have a loved one, but in my experience, especially a parent, pass away, I mean, I don't know how to express how life-changing that is. And myself, and even in conversations with my sisters, there are things that I do completely different that have nothing to do with, or at least logically, and maybe if I really break this down, but there are things that I do differently since the passing of my father, and I don't know that I made a conscious effort to do it differently because he passed away, but there's also a part of me that knows that that was kind of the line of delineation, if that makes sense. You there's certain things that you hold on to really tight, and there are other things that you just let go. And I don't know how else to describe it except to say it that way. But Kelsey, and how she's been vocal when she does talk about what she's gone through this season, she says things that make sense to me as someone who's been in that position. And so some of this, and she said it, I'm going to be selfish in this process. She says, I need to do what's best for me. She's talked about really taking the time needed to make the decision. And a part of perhaps her saying so vehemently that she wants to go into free agency is so that no team talks to her before the beginning of the new year. What is it? They have to wait until February, early February, I think it is.
They can start negotiating mid January. That's when conversations start. Yeah. And then, but the signing is only February 1st.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. But that buys her time to just not have to think about it through someone else's lens. She can, in earnest, think about it in her time, in her way, when she's ready. So that was just something that I really heard and was resonating with me in how she's been talking about that. So
thanks for sharing that with us.
Yeah. And so, yeah, but Kelsey Mitchell is going to be a really interesting free agent who again I could definitely see going back to Indiana. So
Yeah.
Moni's saying, so y'all have both said Seattle should protect the core four. Who will be the sixth, the fifth, and sixth player? Okay, so we got to get through this. So you're moving us along, Moni, which I love. So Nneka Ogwumike, seems obvious. Now she's kind of in the same boat as what we've heard Brianna Stewart doing, signing 1-year contracts. I don't know that Nneka has committed or outwardly said that that's what she's going to do for the remainder of her career. Stewie has pretty much said, at least for the time being, that that's what she plans to do. That doesn't mean that she's not going to go back to New York. That doesn't mean that New York is not going to not court her. They've already court her. That they won't protect her. And I think we're in the same boat with Nneka Ogwumike. And let me just back up, because since the expansion draft is happening, like you said, before that period where negotiations can begin and before free agency officially begins on February 1, the teams have to protect everyone that they either have on contract or they have rights to their contract.
Yeah.
So that includes, because we're in kind of this waiting period, anyone who will be an unrestricted free agent in 2025. So Nneka is included for Seattle. Stewie is included for New York. So I think it's a no-brainer. You do not want Golden State to pick up Nneka as their player for Seattle in the expansion draft, because if she's available for Golden State, that seems like an obvious choice.
Exactly. It does seem like an obvious choice. And there is also a grace period before the expansion draft where Golden State can start conversations with teams and I think potentially agents. So yeah, I do think that it's going to be very interesting to observe the signing of 1-year contract gives players a lot of power and gives them a lot of control over their own career. And when you talk about Stewie and Nneka, when you talk about like market, they are in demand and they have that. They can do that. Can explore opportunities, and because of all of the changes that are coming, it's better if you wait to get a higher salary. And people are talking about how for this next season, free agents are going to sign 1-year contracts, for example, that we're going to see lots of 1-year contracts because of the new CBA. The new CBA changes everything. It changes so much of how players are going to make decisions about their careers, which is more than fair.
Yes, because no one wants to be this year's Sylvia Fowles. For those who don't know, Sylvia Fowles signed a contract with the Minnesota Lynx, and had she waited until the CBA was indoctrinated, she would have been able to make more as a player with a certain amount of tenure. But because she didn't, the Minnesota Lynx locked her in at a certain. So that's what we mean when we say, like, don't be a Sylvia Fowles, but you should be a Sylvia Fowles in pretty much every other aspect of your life. But
definitely.
That's just one little wrinkle. And knowing what I think I know about Sylvia, I don't know that it would have changed her mind one way or another to make that deal, ride out her last season with Minnesota. I don't think she was going anywhere, but I selfishly would have wanted her to make as much money as possible. But anyway.
If I can add one thing, we definitely don't know what Nneka wants. She did talk to Sue Bird and Megan Rapinoe in their podcast. And
she's making rounds. I love it.
Yeah. And I think it was Megan who asked her, because Sue had to leave as they were talking about CBA and free agency, because Sue is a team owner, so she can't be involved in those conversations. So Megan asked Nneka if she had any hints on where her head was at. She was like, I don't know. I still don't know what I'm going to do. I know that I want to go to a place where I have a good connection with the coach. They have a practice facility and the owners are very involved. And she said, Seattle has all that, but that doesn't mean that I'm gonna go there. Those are just things that I'm interested on. So that's what she said in the podcast. Now, I do think that it's very important to take into consideration something that she said in that documentary Shattered Glass, that when she says there are more years behind than ahead of me, and she said that her priority is to win a championship. I think she joined the Storm this year with that idea, with what everyone was thinking, that the Storm was going to make it to the championship, but they had a few issues. They could have gone into the to the finals. Um, so I think that's where her mindset was at. Um, but I don't know if it changes considering what's having. Considering what happened with the Storm this season, considering where the things players have been saying,
Yeah.
and you know, if the Liberty brings NECA.
I'm sorry, hold on. I need to pause because I just noticed, first of all, I love all of the little trinkets that you have in your background, but is that Leonie Fibish on the wall? Oh, that's Flutie.
No, that's
it-
that's Courtney Vandersloot.
It's Flutie. Because I saw the bun, which is hilarious because a lot of people say that Leo is like the biggest.
Yeah.
But
That's
I saw
funny.
it, especially with the light, the way the light is hitting it, because there is this amazing photo of Leo that came across my timeline today. And just the way the light was hitting it, I was like, wait, is that Leo? Like,
No,
anyway, I got
that's
distracted.
no, that's
that's a dope
my wife
photo.
framed that for me.
Okay.
When that photo, you see that she still has a Chicago sky.
Yeah, Chicago.
Yeah. So at the time there weren't lots of like players coming out in magazines, and so I saw that and I told my wife, "Whoa, that's like frame worth," and like 2 days
Nice.
later.
Very nice. Yeah. Anyway, I completely derailed us. But yeah, so to your point about NECA and about the Seattle Storm, I mean, and this is something honestly we're going to continue talking about throughout the off season. Is this a contender? I think Noel Quinn felt that they could be a team in the finals if they pushed in certain avenues. Now, whether she really believes that, whether that was maybe just kind of putting that in maybe NECA or maybe other players' ears so that they believe it, whether to keep them or whether to motivate them, I think those are things we're going to continue to talk about. I don't think that the Seattle Storm realistically should be far off from being a contender because of all of the things that they have, including the people they have on their roster, and they have to push the needle. We saw that the New York Liberty were able to do that, and it made a huge difference. I think that people are becoming hip to what New York did. It's kind of like I cover the MNHL. So like when Vegas went through their expansion draft versus when the Seattle Kraken went through their expansion draft, it was harder for the Kraken to duplicate what Vegas did because teams got wise to what was happening. So I'm curious to see where a team like Seattle is going to move and maneuver, because here's the thing, and we've talked about this, you and I, it's hard to say that they are taking from the same page of the New York Liberty, because the big difference was the New York Liberty got to the finals, even when they were, as I like to say, an easy bake oven version of team chemistry, right?
Yeah.
They were the microwave, they were the microwave sponge cake version of what Vegas had been for so long. The Seattle Storm didn't make it out of the first round. And again, we can talk about why that was, how that happens, all of that in the off season, but it's going to be interesting to see if the Seattle Storm did enough in NECA's first year and are having conversations to make her believe that they can do even more should she sign again. But okay, the core four. So that includes Juwel Lloyd.
Yes, that includes Juwel Lloyd.
We're actually not going to talk about Juwel right now, but I think we both agree that she's probably a player that we wouldn't be surprised if the lists were released. We wouldn't be surprised to see her for a lot of different reasons on the protected list. If and I guess we can leave it here for Juwel now, mostly because we're going to talk about her in the next few segments. But the reason that you almost protect Juwel, regardless of what we're going to talk about later on the episode, is because you don't want to give Juwel Lloyd away for free.
No, you don't. You definitely don't. She's, again, don't want to jump the gun, but you don't want to give her for free. No.
Yeah. I mean, I think we'll leave that part there for now because we're going to dive deeper into Juwel Lloyd today.
Yeah.
And we can talk about the longer conversation. But
yeah.
I'll be honest, outside of those, Roberta, and because you have access to the same notes that I do, I was not sure where Seattle would go after the core four.
Yeah.
But I know you have some names, so walk us through who you have in the last two protected spots. Again, thinking a la Juwel Lloyd, these are players you don't want to give to your opponent for free.
No, and I realized that I wrote down the wrong name here in the list. That's why my mind got a little lost in the beginning.
You're good.
Because the core four is Juwel, Skylar Neka, and Ezzy. So I do think that the Storm is going to protect Ezzy.
Okay.
So the core fair. Four, yeah. So, but two players, actually one player that was mentioned here that if I had to bet, I would say that like a 75 to 80% chance that she's going to be protected. Jordan Horston. I do believe that she's going to be protected.
Protected. Yeah, I think that's fair. I think sometimes, I'll be honest, when I go through this exercise, hey, Aloysius, hey, Ronnie, love to see y'all. Sometimes I confuse like protected for an expansion draft because and I put the rules because Moni had some questions. It is extremely confusing. I also thought, hey, if you're a free agent, you could do what you want. Like, no need to protect. That's not like the WNBA has put out their rules. Anyone who they have the rights to at the end of this 2024 season has to go on their full list considered quote unquote active roster. And then from that active roster, that's where the team must pick 6 players. So like Rebecca Gardner, for example, the New York Liberty have to list Rebecca Gardner on their full list of players who they have the rights to and or are on their roster. And then they have to decide, if they want to protect. So
do they have to include Jalen Sherrod?
Yeah.
Oh.
I mean, was on the roster.
Okay.
Yeah. So anyway, it gets DeWanna Bonner. So DeWanna Bonner is the DeWanna Bonner thing because she's been cored for 2 different teams? Is that what it is? Because she hasn't been cored twice for Connecticut.
No, but I think that before the new CBA, she had been cored, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
I am also in the her hoop stats page because it's so good.
So highly recommend. But there's the W has a lot of exceptions. Like, hey, Stewie hurt her Achilles. Let's make up something so that the Seattle Storm don't have to absorb her salary. That was really crazy. And I still I have a lot of beef over that. I have no beef with Stewie, but that was absolutely the wrong precedent to set by the WNBA. But
exactly. Yep, I agree.
Okay, so I yes, you're right. The core 4, Ezzy. I'm sorry, you're right. We had originally talked about Ezzy, and then we both led with Gabby. So
yeah, exactly. It completely like went over my.
Ezzy is not. She is not going unprotected.
No,
she's not going unprotected.
Yeah,
Jordan. I guess again, I keep going back and forth on how I think about this protection. I think Jordan's probably the right move. And why? Because again, we talked about some of this. We're definitely going to get into it moving forward. But players like Sammy, definitely Mercedes, who we talked about last episode, those are just players. The writing kind of seems like it's on the wall.
Yeah.
Sammy was very open with us, not in a mean or curt way, but in a matter of fact way that she, like we talked about Kelsey Mitchell, plans to go into free agency. So okay, Roberta, let's go over in our second segment who we think the Seattle Storm will. I almost said core. Now I'm getting all my words confused. Who will they protect in the expansion draft? We won't know because the list will not be released, but we agreed on Gabby Williams, Skylar Diggins-Smith, Nneka Ogwumike, Juwel Lloyd, who we're going to talk about later on the show, Ezi Magmalore, and Jordan Horston.
Yes, those are my,
That does mean a player like Nika Mule becomes available. Again, Sammy Whitcomb seems like she's going to explore free agency one way or another. So that's going to be interesting. So, all right, that is our second quarter. Again, we switch things around. So our halftime is what we sometimes use as our shoot around. So we're going to take a little break from talking about the Seattle Storm specific and pull back a little bit to talk about things happening in women's basketball. Coaching updates. Our list isn't even up to date because there were updates that happened today. And we saw that Atlanta made a move. Yeah. And so we'll start with that. Atlanta, the Atlanta Dream making a move. They grab a coach from the NCAA, and on Blue Sky, I had someone asking, what do we know about coaches who come from the NCAA into the WNBA? I think it's a great question. And I also just don't know that we have enough information. But I think it's Carl Semesco, right? From Florida Gulf Coast University, has one of the winningest records in NCAA Division I women's basketball behind Gina Auriemma and Kim Mulkey only. So third in highest winning percentage among active coaches. A lot of people very excited about this move for Atlanta. Has done really great things at the NCAA Division I level, but to my knowledge, Roberta, no experience at the pro level. And for me, that's the differentiator. Stephanie White, for example, college experience. Went from actually the WNBA to college and then has come back to the WNBA. But the difference for me with Stephanie White, even a Walt Hopkins, which that was not great on a few other levels. We're not going to get into that. This is not a podcast for New York Liberty fans, so we don't have to talk about it. The differentiator for me is not whether or not you have NCAA experience, but whether you have pro experience as an assistant, as an associate, or I guess even as a head coach. And when I say pro, I'm talking overseas. I'm talking even NBA, G League. We're seeing some G League coaches come now as assistants to the WNBA. Mm-hmm. To me, that's the differentiator.
I agree. And I was thinking around, similar lines earlier when I saw the announcement, doing some research on him. He has been at Florida Gulf for 22 years. He started there in 2002, left now. And when he started, Florida Gulf was a Division II college, a Division II university. Recently became a Division I, so he helped with that transition. So my main concern is that it's not even that he doesn't have pro experience, it's that he's coming from probably a mid-level school. And it just, I don't know. I feel like Atlanta could even they could go after coaches with pro experience, like Patricia. So I think it was an interesting choice. Of course, we're only gonna know with time, but definitely off the curve.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I mean, I think time will be the time will only tell. That being said, I mean, Kurt Miller came from NCAA and not at a big institution, at least not earlier in his career, at certain parts in his career. That's how he overlaps with like Becky Hammon, for example. So, not a deal breaker, but definitely something to keep an eye on. Speaking of Kurt Miller, he mutually parted ways, I think is what we're saying, with the LA Sparks and has been acquired by a team technically still in search of a head coach, and that is the Dallas Wings.
Yeah.
EVP, Executive Vice President, and General Manager of the Dallas Wings. This seems like it's a move from Kurt as a lead bench boss into more of an executive role. I think he proved to be a pretty solid executive with his time and what he was able to recruit from the Connecticut side. And I've said this in our Slack channel. I always, especially as of late, was feeling like Kurt Miller might be going the Bill Laimbeer route. Like his time and his influence on the bench directly with players in the game action was maybe coming to an end. But that doesn't mean that he doesn't have an impactful eye, an impactful mind, impactful experience. And it seems like Dallas is hedging their bets on getting a little bit of that from Kurt Miller in this move.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that he's looking, he's in a new chapter of his life. I do believe that with this Dallas Wings, he has an opportunity to build around Arike, Tierra McCowan, Kalani Brown. I think that he has interesting pieces. They have a big draft coming up. And I think that for him, it's a big opportunity. If he is looking to change the trajectory of his career, it's a big opportunity for him to prove that he has what it takes to be an executive.
Yeah, I would agree there. We're going to keep it moving. Tyler Marsh tapped as head coach for Chicago. He comes from the Becky Hammon tree. She's now out 2 assistants because Natasha will be the first head coach for the Valkyries, for Golden State Valkyries. Becky Hammon, though, did add Ty Ellis. I talked about the G League connection. Ty Ellis has that G League connection. And of course, the shock that was a shock to absolutely no one. Stephanie White returning to Indiana. She's been an assistant coach. She's been a player there. She's been a head coach at Indiana and now will return once again in the Caitlin Clark and Aaliyah Boston era, to be determined if Kelsey Mitchell will join the party. But Kelsey Mitchell, an OSU alum, not sure y'all knew that, but you know who else is an OSU alum? Katie Smith. And you know what? She's returning to the Ohio State University as an assistant. So had her chance at head coach under Bill Laimbeer, didn't work out in New York like at all. Did help them get that lottery draft pick in Sabrina. So just remember who helped get Sabrina to New York. Jokes aside, Katie Smith, who is just back in New York as the Minnesota Lynx played the New York Liberty in the WNBA Finals, will be going to the Ohio State University. Interesting to see that she's going from an assistant role in the WNBA to an assistant role in NCAA, but if I had to guess, some of that NCAA money had something to do with it. And I don't know, Katie Smith has a pretty easygoing demeanor. I hate to agree with Gino Auriemma specifically in what he said once. That being said, I think that there is a world that exists where some coaches don't want to be head coaches or don't want to be head coaches again or anytime soon. I don't know which bucket Katie Smith falls into, but I think she will be extremely happy to be back at her alma mater. Okay, I want to move on to another thing here, and this will be our last piece in halftime before we get back to our conversation and do our deep dive with Juwel Lloyd. Now, if you thought the expansion draft was confusing, the lottery is not super confusing. There's just a lot of moving parts because the lottery is dependent on the record, the regular season record for the last 2 seasons. So
Mhm.
while Washington had the least successful, the worst record among the teams in the draft lottery, they actually have the least favorable odds because of their 2-year record. That
Mhm.
means that the team that Kurt Miller just left has better odds than the team that Kurt Miller just arrived to. The LA Sparks have the best chances at the number 1 overall pick. Out of 1,000 tries, they have 442, I guess, ping pong balls or whatever you want to call it, picks. They have that. That's how many of those little things say LA Sparks. So they have the best chance at getting the number 1 overall pick, and they're guaranteed at least the 3rd overall pick coming into the
Mhm.
2025 WNBA draft, which we know will be on April 15th. They haven't announced the location, but it's safe to say that New York is likely in consideration. Now, if they really want to go crazy, they might go all the way out to California to hang out with the Valkyries, but we'll see. So LA has the best picks. Now, this is interesting. Dallas and Chicago actually have the same amount of little ping pong tennis balls at 227 out of 1,000. But Dallas, because Dallas went on this streak where they gave a lot of picks away, they got a lot of picks. Chicago, Dallas and Chicago are tied, and Dallas has Chicago's first round pick, and they're both in the lottery.
Yeah. Yep, that was I would say Dallas had a vision, and it's probably gonna pay off in the in this draft, because if we thought that the 2024 class was good, the 2025, oh my god.
Yeah. So Chicago got what? They got 3 and 8, 3 and 7. What was Camila and
Camila was 3rd, and then Angel Reese was 7th.
They moved because they moved up to 7.
Yeah.
And that had something that one of those moves had something to do with Minnesota, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I think they traded
the Reese.
My God, who were the players?
7 and 8.
Wasn't it Rachel Benham? Because she was in Minnesota and she was traded to Chicago.
I don't remember, but I have no idea. Maybe that's possible. Anyway, I think this could be wild, and this is set to be a really interesting draft. Of course, everyone keeping an eye on Paige Bueckers. Probably, I don't know that many people think she won't be the number 1 pick, regardless of who has it. So that's going to be interesting. So again, the lottery is coming up. The draft won't happen until April, but the lottery will be coming up this month. We'll know who has the number 1 pick. Also, keep in mind that some of this could relate to what we see next month in the expansion draft. And there can be all kinds of trades that happen. Indiana seems ready to chomp at the bit when it comes to trades. They actually made an expansion draft trade, and that's how they got Stephanie White. Stephanie White goes to the Miami Soul in the expansion draft. Indiana trades for Stephanie White for some player. Wonder what she's up to now. Somebody, Sandy Brondello? I don't know.
I don't know if I've heard of her.
I think I saw her, on a stage somewhere in New York City smoking a cigar with Fat Joe. I don't
know. So it's people take Sandy for granted when it comes to celebrating. After Australia took the bronze, someone from the Australian team posted a video of the players hanging out, and Sandy just hanging out with them.
I believe it.
And Sandy chugged the beer in this very weird cup, and all the players were so excited.
Sandy's a real one. She's a good time. But yeah. All right. Well, that was our halftime rundown. Again, so many other topics. The news cycle keeps going, and we dreamed of days like this, Roberta, where the news cycle for women's basketball never ends.
It doesn't.
It never, ever ends. So you just have to stay tuned. Again, Tempestade Talk is going every other week, but on the off weeks for Tempestade Talk, you can listen to our other Black Rosy Media podcast, Gotta Get Up, a podcast for New York Liberty fans. But we're going to keep this train. Yeah, Miami Soul. I know that's a throwback.
Oh my God.
That's a throwback. And I see y'all have some questions. Some of them we'll get to as we keep moving on. We're going to talk about Juwel Lloyd next. If I don't get to your question now, keep them coming in the chat. We'll get to it in the fourth quarter, which is where we do our listener questions and comments. Okay. That was a lot. And
there's been a lot going on in this season. So that is
so much going on, including the fact that Juwel Lloyd wasn't the Juwel Lloyd that we've known. Certainly not the Juwel Lloyd who was the scoring champion last year. Now, it didn't help the Storm get out of the basement, but it was just a trying season, I think, for Juwel. And I actually want to play a clip from Juwel. I have a clip. This is from the exit interviews. Roberta, you and I were both there. And, I think it's always good to get a sense for how players are kind of taking in what they were or weren't, quite honestly, able to do, how they perceive things happening. So I want us to hear Juwel Lloyd talk about how she is kind of taking on and how she would describe her season, specifically with regard to a term that she used with us in the exit interviews, benchmarks. So here's Juwel Lloyd.
For me, going into the offseason, this is a different season for me. This is the first time in my career where I haven't hit my benchmarks. And I mean, when I say career, I mean from like 8th grade, right? Like, so that's a new experience for me. And so there's, there's factors that go into that, but at the same time, I'm taking ownership in how this season and how I went and how I play this season. And, my job is to get better every year. And so it's the first year I feel like I fully haven't got better. But I definitely had a growth. So it's like different, it's like maybe the basketball wasn't there, but my leadership and the person I am has grown. So I think, for people who know me, definitely my parents as well, you want to see that growth as a person, right? Like you want to see that evolution because that's what's going to sustain you. Basketball is only 10% of my life, right? But if I'm not growing as a person, then something's not right. So for me, it's to go home, rest, be around, an amazing environment of people and get right back to work.
Unfortunately,
We'll get into a little bit more from Juwel Lloyd because you heard a little bit of that clip because I was a little slow to hit pause. But I think that what we also heard from Juwel is about this team and this concept, Roberta, you and I talked about it. Was this season a failure? And so we'll hear from Juwel on whether that's, how she feels about it, etc. But what I heard Juwel say there is that this was the first time since 8th grade where she did not meet her own expectations. And again, she didn't hit the mark. She didn't meet the brief, however you want to talk about it, especially within context of how she performed last season, which is wild, right? She has this stellar individual performance. She talked about how she doesn't even think she was healthy for 4 full games last year. And she is the leading scorer in the league, right? And then on the other side, this past season, you bring in Skylar Diggins-Smith. You bring in Nneka Ogwumike. You eventually have Gabby Williams. And Juwel still, or Juwel never really found her footing. And not exactly sure. I think there's a lot of ways people have taken Juwel's absence and without a key role on the Olympic team. But I don't know, what from your perspective, Roberta, was going on with Juwel Lloyd? And I want to talk about earlier in the year because later in the season, we do know that she had an injury that actually, had her out of commission leading into the playoffs. So assuming that she was healthy, and she talked about that a little bit as well, do you have a sense of maybe what wasn't clicking for Juwel this season. You're muted, by the way.
I'm sorry.
All good, all
That
good.
was
I saw that
that
deep
was
sigh, and I was like, I'm gonna wait to see if okay. Nope, still muted.
it was let me replay that. It was a rough season for Juwel Lloyd
Right. Yeah.
in so many ways. And I think one thing that is interesting to point, and actually, I noticed that watching this video right now, Jewel was so light in the exit interviews.
Mhm.
She seemed at peace. Her
Yes.
voice was calm. She just, she was so like, I don't think I've seen her like that before. She was just like, it was almost like, it's
Yeah.
over. I think there's a lot of frustration. And when we look into the last season and this season, she had, a historical performance in 2023, but that didn't take the storm too far. Actually, didn't take the storm anywhere. All the respect to Jewel, what she did was amazing, but that wasn't, record changing. That wasn't, the team didn't do well.
Right.
Whereas this team, they went to the play, they got to the playoffs. At some point, they were in third place. So I think that there was a lot of change, especially in terms of the Storm culture of play. Last season, she was the key player. She was the one that plays were being drawn to, and this year that's not. It wasn't quite like that. So I do think that the change in her role has had a lot to do with her uh, with her points dropping drastically,
Mm.
but also her. It's just that like she wasn't performing, and when you look at statistics are can be deceiving, and when you look into her regular statistics, it seems like she still has 19.7 points per game. That's like one of her highest. However, I think there is a very interesting advanced stat, which is the
Yep.
efficient field goal percentage,
Yep.
which you put together, the your shots. It was her lowest, she had the lowest efficient field goal percentage in her career, and that's very far from her best season, which wasn't even 2023, it was 2020. um, she also had uh, she had a very low um, points per shot, which counts like each of your how many points is it does each of your shots count, and it was the lowest in her career too. So she she did put some numbers that were not the worst, but in terms of efficiency, she was not there, and uh, she was not the X factor for the Storm.
Right.
Whereas last year she was the X factor, and years before she was also she could be the X factor. Um,
Yeah.
and there's like the point drop, a 5 percentage point drop from 24.7% to 19.7. You can bring Neka, Skylar. That shouldn't happen to a player who was the top scorer. I believe it's a mix of change in the Storm tactical playing, uh, how they wrote their plays, but I also think it has to do with her mental and with the way
Mhm.
that things operated with the Storm. And in the last seasons, we saw some stuff coming up. We have seen her mom complaining on social media, which is an indication, of how the player is feeling. So someone said, Aloysia, I don't know if we're ready to talk about that yet as like at this moment, but I don't think it's impossible. And I honestly think she's not I have been told by 2 sources that she's unhappy there, and that there's a lot of conflict between her coaching. There's a lot that's going on.
Wow. And that's so interesting because, I mean, Skylar Diggins-Smith was so complimentary of Juwel Lloyd in particular. And I do think Skylar Diggins-Smith has the potential to really thrive in Seattle.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So I do think that, yes, Skylar was very complimentary, but when you look back at the exit interview and her earlier interviews, she would say, "This is Juwel Lloyd's team. This is Juwel Lloyd's team." And at the exit interview, she said, "I saw myself as a leader, as the leader of this team from day one." And she said that came along very easily for her, and that she saw herself as the leader.
I mean, but here's the thing. I think it's an interesting observation, but somewhere the Seattle Storm has to take some responsibility here, because Juwel Lloyd last season, so 2023 I'm talking about, made it explicitly clear that she was struggling to find the balance between being a vocal leader, which she never had to be in Seattle, and being the leader on the court. I'm talking playing point, being the go-to scoring option. She was, quite honestly, it sounded like she was exhausted by trying to figure out how to do that. Now it yielded, again, scoring champion results, but I think it was emotionally and mentally draining for Juwel. So when you have a situation like that, some players are better suited to play a supporting role. And I have a hunch that in most, not all, but in most situations, that's Juwel Lloyd. She is like a 2-guard through and through. All right.
Yeah, that's for sure.
She's not a hybrid.
There's no
let me mess around and take this ball up. She is a 2-guard. She plays like a 2-guard. She thinks like a 2-guard. I think she leads like a 2-guard, and there's nothing wrong with that. But to have Skylar say this is Juwel's team, well, first of all, I think there are a few different ways you can interpret that, but I don't think that the interpretation should have been to Skylar, or to Juwel for that matter, that we need you to take on the leadership of this team, especially when you have Skylar Diggins-Smith and Nneka Ogwumike coming to the team. So if there was a disconnect, I don't know how that was communicated. Was Juwel told early on, and maybe she just had a little bit of difficulty readjusting? Because that's hard to do as well. Once you've gotten a taste of everything's on my shoulders, right? Let's take it to legend of the Seattle Storm, Sue Bird. Sue Bird knew coming into UConn that she was, once she got over her freshman season, I think she had an injury, like an ankle thing or something. There was a time where she stepped on the court, and everything that went right, she was a part of. Everything that went wrong, even if she was out in the hallway getting a sip of water, was her fault. That's the kind of extreme that Gino Auriemma took to make Sue Bird not only know, but live up to that was her team.
Yeah.
Sue Bird, when she came to Seattle, I don't know explicitly what conversations were had, but Seattle knew that Sue was trained as a point guard, a true point guard, and from UConn, no less, to take on that leadership role.
Yeah. Yeah.
The Seattle Storm, Sue Bird retires. Stewie goes to New York. They lose all of that leadership immediately.
Yeah.
And Stewie was not the same type of leader in Seattle that she is now in New York. And she's had to learn that as well. But Juwel was not going to be, nobody anytime soon, in my estimation, is going to be like Sue Bird, and certainly not in Seattle.
No.
And so what are the conversations? So I don't know, maybe this is me reaching, but for someone from the outside looking in, if explicit conversations weren't had before the season, certainly during the season, and hopefully they've been had after the season, there is a world in which you have an unhappy Juwel Lloyd, perhaps a
Mhm.
confused and conflicted Juwel Lloyd, and a Skylar Diggins Smith who ain't never scared, but also is not going to be disrespectful. Like, you have
Yeah.
to, regardless of your tenure, right? She is a veteran through and through. Nneka is a veteran through and through, literally the executive, the president of the
Mhm.
PA. And that couldn't be their team on day one.
Yeah.
Stewie said the same thing. She came from overseas late. She comes to New York. She needed to observe first. However, Sandy Brondello early on figured out when Stewie's ready, when she's acclimated, it's her team.
Mhm.
I
Yes.
don't know if Seattle ever found the right balance.
Yeah, I do like that you said that at some point, like the Storm needs to take accountability because, like, as we talked about, and like I said in the last episode, the Storm was not ready for Stewie to leave. They were confident. Ownership was confident that Brianna Stewart was staying. Um, Almost as if, like, she owed, like, almost as if she had to take on Sue's legacy. So there wasn't a plan. There wasn't really they And with not having a plan, that means that, think about when you're at work and your manager is caught off guard, and then you have to do things that your manager doesn't even know you have to do, and then it gets so confused. I feel like that's what happened, because honestly, management didn't know what they were going to do. They just started, like, bringing pieces together, people here, people there, and Juwel automatically became the leader. It's also like talking about corporate world, when someone quits and someone needs to take that management role, but that person is not ready yet, or that person was not given, was not prepared for it, and
Yeah.
it just happens. You're setting the person up for failure. So I think that communication was not ideal, and I can say that communication is not the strength of management at the Storm. So I do believe that Juwel, have didn't really know, wasn't aware. I think that the lack of planning for a post Sue/Stewie era, that really set Juwel up. Not for, I wouldn't say for I mean, considering the season, like, for failure, if we're gonna use the word in that sense. So I think it has a lot to do with that. And because Juwel is a player that, the way that she's not the kind of player that necessarily let, like, things happen and then she lets that goes to the court and comes back to it. She is someone who relies a lot on her emotions. So I think that it all contributed to it. I think that it all started in the no planning for the post Sue and post Stewie era, because you're missing two historical, like, two players who are, like, cornerstones of the league, cornerstones of the team. Sue Bird had been the identity of the Storm for 20 years, and then you had and then you added Stewie, who had
Stewie,
been,
right? The player, the
yeah,
generational talent that kept Sue in.
yeah, exactly. So you lose your identity, and you're not losing, let's say, again, if Mercedes leaves, it's not like the Storm is losing its identity. It's gonna be like an easy fix. It's gonna be something that's easy to adapt.
Yeah.
Losing is Stewie and not being prepared to replace that role, that is not only a bad look, it's like it's bad management, and just it sets your team up for failure, and then it ends up impacting other players. So, and then you saw it was basically like last year was basically give Juwel Lloyd the ball, let Juwel Lloyd shoot. And that's what was happening because the other players were not scoring. Now this season it was different, and she had to shift that mentality for the past 2 seasons, just like that. Stewie left, change mentality.
Yep.
Skylar comes in, change our mentality. It changes so quickly. Like how hard is that on a player's, well-being and on their brain? And she was supposed to be the franchise player. She was supposed to be. I know that she part of her staying on the team with after Sue and Stewie left was that like she wanted to be, the franchise player. She wanted to be that, and that was kind of promised to her. And then it lasted for 1 season. She comes in, and Skylar, NECA, Gabby, they all end up, being on the spotlight and not her. So, and the fact that she's very close to Sadie's, and Sadie said those things,
Yeah.
it's not a good indication that she would want to stay. It was definitely a rough year for her. She had a smaller role in the U.S. team at the Olympics. I'm curious to see how that's going to how this free agency is gonna go for Jewel, and I wonder honestly right now. I don't know what team would fit better for her. I know that the Sky is looking for. I was at the Tyler Marsh press conference, and he said that he wants players. He said shoot, shoot, shoot. That's what he wants to see on the team. He wants to empower players to shoot. That could be Juwel Lloyd. She's from Chicago.
So what you're saying is Marina Mabry's coming back.
I'm not gonna say anything.
I mean, that was the thing. Like trade with Juwel and KP. I mean,
KP as in Kelsey Plum.
Yeah, which KP?
At the Storm? I don't see that happening.
Yeah.
I see the vision. I do see the vision. But I think between her and Skylar,
welcome her back with open arms.
Yeah. I just think it would be complicated. Yes, Kelsey Plum. Because she's a 1. Skylar is a 1. Yeah. I don't see Kelsey Plum as a bench player. And I don't see Skylar as a bench player. But I do think that can happen in the future. If Skylar retires soon, I think Kelsey Plum would be amazing for the Seattle Storm. And with her ties to the UW.
Here's a question though, since I guess we're in the 4th quarter now. So we didn't really wrap up the Juwel Lloyd conversation with a neat bow, but I want to be mindful of time, and we have so many great questions that I do want to get to them, and I think Kelsey Plum is a great segue. To be continued with Juwel Lloyd. I think we just don't know enough now. I think it's fair to say that there have been several signs, and like you said, you have some sources that you've talked to Roberta to, I guess, corroborate this, but Juwel Lloyd was uneasy. Let's just say it that way. Mentally, physically, emotionally, on the court, off the court, it seemed like Juwel Lloyd was uneasy, and she's taken ownership. We played that clip. She takes ownership for some of that. So how does the team move forward? I had another clip, but again, we're going to get into the 4th quarter. We'll get into this on the next episode, and I'll probably place it on social media so you can hear more of Juwel Lloyd, since we did her deep dive on this episode. But let's go back to this Kelsey Plum thing. Exactly, Moni, I'm glad. Yes, Kelsey Plum. I was just going to ask you, Roberta, is Kelsey Plum a true point guard? Now, this was a point of confrontation. Maybe that's a little bit of a heavy word, but it was a little bit of a rift at times between her and Bill Laimbeer when he was the head coach, because Kelsey Plum, when she was finally healthy after her ankle injury in her rookie season, remember that was an Aces team, just newly minted the Aces from the Stars, and Kelsey Plum was very honest and vocal about how she felt that she wasn't contributing offensively the way she wanted because she didn't have the ball in her hands. I think that's almost verbatim what she said at one point in time. And so after that, we did see in the Bill Laimbeer era, Kelsey Plum take on a little bit more of a point guard role, but I still am not convinced that she's a point guard. And she's been working alongside Chelsea Gray, and I think effectively. So if she were to come to Seattle while Skylar is there, I don't think it really presents problems, because then Plum can do what she does. And she also has that plum dog mentality. And you have that in your backcourt. They are going to be barking up a storm. I kind of like it. It also could be absolutely diabolical, but I would be willing to try it.
It would be like it would be so chaotic. But how do you say, the positive chaotic situation? I would love to see that. And for that, I think that she's a two who can be a one, and that's why my mind went there. But when you think about it, do you think Juwel would thrive better under Becky? Perhaps,
Maybe. And I guess that's a great question, because I mean, you and I have talked about this before. We've talked about it on the pod. We are going to do a deep dive, including Noelle Quinn, so we'll save some of that. I don't think we know the full potential of Noelle Quinn. I also don't think that Noelle Quinn is a top coach. She's not a bottom coach in the WNBA, but she's not quite a top coach yet. I think she's scratching still the surface. She's still very much learning. And I'm curious. I'm very eager to see where she goes. I wouldn't say she's at a top level, and who knows what that's going to look like. We have so many vacancies, and some of these coaches, it looks like, at least not next season, are going to get a chance to come back, which I don't know. Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? Might be a conversation for another day, but I don't know what kind of coach Juwel needs. On the other side of the coin, I feel confident that Kelsey Plum could find her way under any coach, if that makes sense.
I agree. I think that I agree with you. I think that Juwel would thrive under a more experienced coach, and a coach who has, a track record of winning championships. I think that she misses that. I also know, from sources, that one of the reasons that Stewie left is because she wanted a coach who would take her to a championship soon. And Noe was part of the, what she thought wasn't going to work for her.
Interesting.
And I see.
Yeah, and I don't think that's necessarily it's not a
no. I don't think it's a bad thing.
It's just kind of two different places,
Yeah, it's different.
I mean, she's not one of the oldest players among, seasoned veterans or champions in the league, and she also has, like Skylar, children, know, and that maybe is a part of the equation for her in a different way. I don't know, but that's interesting. Okay. There were some other questions, not all of them exactly storm related, which is fine. Go ahead.
I saw that someone asked me if I didn't see Satu staying. That was an oversight. Okay. If I were the Dallas Wings, there's no way I would not protect Satu.
Right. Well, she said she wants to test the waters as well.
Yeah. But when it comes to protecting, I'm sure that they're going to protect Satu. I know that people have been like, Satu in the Liberty. And going back to, kind of, I kind of see Indiana Fever similarity when it comes to, like, I know that Noe has more experience than oh my god, Chrissy Sides.
Sides, yeah.
But I think that depending on the level of player that you have on the roster, you need to have a coach that's on the same level. And
I
when you
mean,
have, NECA,
mm,
Skylar, who are champions.
yeah. That is a good point. And I don't see Noe. It's not that she's a bad choice. I love that you brought
No,
up Christy Sides. Again, Noelle Quinn, do I think she should be without a job? No. Do I think
no. Mm-mm.
but this is a conversation, and I wrote about this in CBS Sports because so many people are focused on the vacancies, but I think it's more of a massive shift happening in the
Mhm.
WNBA. And you've been talking about players and the expectation, and that we have some legendary generational style talents that are getting to a point in their career where they're like you said about NECA, like maybe Stewie has been alluding to, fewer days ahead of them than there are behind them.
Mhm.
Or they have more days behind them than they have ahead of them. I think that the league needs to and wants to, the teams, I should say, not the league, the teams in the league want to be attractive to those players who maybe do sign
Mhm.
1-year contracts. Everyone was kind of getting on Tina Charles, but now everyone in the Tina Charles era is about to pull a Tina Charles.
Exactly. And that's why I think people were like, I am very pragmatic about it. Lots of people talk about team loyalty, blah, blah. This is a business,
Business.
and the women's sports, women basketball business landscape has been rapidly changing. It's become
Yep.
more competitive, it's becoming more lucrative. And we
Mhm.
know that it's the sports industry. People
Yep.
want to make money, and they have to. You can't demand loyalty from a player. The generation of Sue Birds, it's not here
Yeah,
anymore.
Tamika Catchings,
Yeah,
Maya Moore.
like, it's different now. It's a different landscape. It all has changed so much, and I
Yep.
think that's what people were expecting of Stewie. They wanted her to be that old school loyal, almost like blind loyalty player, but that's not her. Stewart is a bold
Yeah.
woman who
She is
takes chances, and
about
she is so
business.
smart. So, her moving to New York, Puma was there, the business opportunities were there. That's why I think I know that NECA had a chance to choose the Liberty in the off season, in the past free agency. I wouldn't be surprised, if the Liberty tried to chase after her again. The WNBPA is in New York. New York can get another. I mean, add NECA to the paint. The New York Liberty is getting another title. So I think that that's where players are heading today, and this CBA is going to change everything. Players might get longer contracts depending on what the CBA says. Players might get shorter contracts depending on what the CBA says. It's all like open.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely going to be interesting. I think Noelle Quinn has a place, has a role in the WNBA. It's
Yeah,
just a matter of if she can show a few more results. Quite
yeah,
frankly, she has to show results.
yeah.
She inherited a really unique, and I would say kind of sought after franchise.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but she's gotta kind of prove that. And
Yep.
she has the mind. I think she does have the mentality, but
Mm-hmm.
coaching and the business side are a lot more connected than I think people want to admit.
Yeah,
And
I would love.
yeah,
Sorry,
and
go
I
on.
don't know that Noelle Quinn has been able to have enough exposure in real time to the business side of the coaching element of the WNBA from that perspective to give her the runway that she needs, again, going into a rapidly changing WNBA.
I agree. And honestly, the head coach position was like sprung on her. No one was expecting that Hughes to retire. So she inherited a team, and those have also been big changes for her. She also had to adapt to a team without Sue Bird, who she not only coached, she played with.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I honestly, I would love to see her in Los Angeles. I'm not gonna lie.
Ooh,
And that's where she's
interesting.
from. I think that there's
Yeah,
a team
that
there
could
that she
be interesting.
the players would appreciate her.
I think you need to, and I mean, Pokey Chapman is a solid choice, and I think that's probably a little bit of why Seattle did that. But I think you need to take a little heat off of Noelle Quinn sooner rather than later, and the only way to do that is either to have her as an assistant associate, or, and I actually don't even know if this is possible. I could be absolutely making something up, but what about co-head coach?
I think it could work. I
But
mean,
I think you just need someone with a little more sandpaper
yeah.
and who they have. I mentioned the word cachet, right? And I hate that this is real, but it is. We have to admit. You just need someone who is going to back up Noe in a way where if that person co-signs, ain't nobody arguing. Not a
And I
damn
think
person is arguing with them.
that's Pokey's role. That's definitely
Yeah.
Pokey's role.
Yeah.
I do think that Pokey plays that exact role. She talks about how much she goes to Pokey for decisions,
Mhm.
and also who wanted to bring Jordan, who put the seed of bringing Jordan, Pokey, and
Yeah.
Jordan is a player who is going, you know, uh, 1-2 years, she's gonna be a danger in this league.
Yeah.
So I agree with that,
Mhm.
and I also think that I don't know. I think the Los Angeles opportunity, I think it would be fun, and she's very family oriented. Her
Yeah.
family's there, so I think it would be cool. I think
Very
it's more
interesting.
like of a fun thing
Yeah.
than you know.
For sure, for sure. All right, I saw this one, so we'll bring it up because I know we have a lot of my folks from our Gotta Get Up community joining us here tonight. Would you trade the Book of Ionescu? Also, I love that Aloysius always talks about the Book of Ionescu. Would you trade the Book of Ionescu for Lloyd? So
I mean,
Lloyd, so I just want to be clear. We're talking Juwel Lloyd to New York and Sabrina Ionescu to Seattle. Oh boy, I feel like there's so many layers to this.
yeah, that it has so many layers to that.
My reaction
As a New York Liberty fan,
as
go.
a New York, yeah, as a New York Liberty fan, heck no, we ain't doing that.
Yeah,
Absolutely not. Coming off a championship where Sabrina Ionescu had one good thumb, no good thumbs on her shooting hand. Absolutely not. We're not doing
yeah.
that. We're not doing it.
Mm-mm.
So me as a New York Liberty and Seattle Storm podcaster, reporter, I'm a national reporter.
Yeah,
There's so many layers.
yeah. I agree.
Do we think Sandy Brondello could be a Juwel Lloyd whisperer? I think Sandy Brondello can coach anybody.
I
Anyone
agree.
who's not an absolute butthole. Because
Yeah.
I think that Sandy's not a punk, but she's also, I get the sense that she's not overly confrontational. Like I can be an overly confrontational person. I know that about myself. And when my 10 toes are down and my line has been drawn in the sand, I will stay there as long as is required.
Yeah.
As long as is required, and you best believe
Respect.
I ain't leaving till the other person surrenders. Like that's just who I am, I don't get the sense that Sandy doesn't need to be that. And I love that for her.
No. Yeah.
She doesn't need to be that.
Yeah.
So I think that Sandy I think she's a great people's coach. Some people say like players coach. I think it's beyond just that. I think she just knows how to tap into the good in people. I think she knows how to have conversations with people to get a sense for where they are before she makes a decision. I don't think that she makes decisions on snap judgments or to quote unquote teach lessons. That doesn't seem to be her MO. And I think that Juwel Lloyd could benefit from a coach like that, given what we talked about on this episode. Now, Sabrina to Seattle.
Listen, maybe not Seattle, but I could see her perhaps in a few years going to Portland. That's her.
Portland over Golden State?
Maybe Golden State. Where in California? I know she's from California, but where in California?
NorCal. She's from the Bay Area.
Oh, that I don't know anything about California.
I mean,
for me,
if she goes to Portland, it's because she went to Oregon, but I don't think that Oregon campus is really anywhere near Portland. I'm not.
No, but the Portland fans drive to Seattle every time.
To Seattle, but her tie to Oregon is the University of Oregon, not Portland, is my point. If you're going to attach her to a WNBA franchise because of her ties personally, I think it makes more sense for her to be tied to Golden State because she's actually from that part of California. But this is interesting. Nike is personally recruiting her to Oregon. Now, she is a Nike athlete. She has those Sabrina 2's bronze, thank you very much, in Oregon, the state of Oregon. She loves the Ducks. She absolutely loves. Like the mascot was at her wedding type love. I love that for her. I also love my alma mater. I'm actually going to my alma mater tomorrow. But I don't know. I think, Portland.
Can you imagine?
You go from a New York market to Portland?
I mean, she does. I can see Stewie staying. I can see Stewie as like New York as the city. I feel like Sabrina is less. Yes, UNESCO. I'm not saying that she's not New York, but I think that naturally her personality is very West Coast.
For sure. And no. Listen, Linda, listen. As someone who's born in New York, I don't admit this often, but when it comes to sports, not all of you business people from Ohio, we're not talking about you. When it comes to sports, you don't have to be from New York, but there is a line of delineation from when you play in New York and you become a New Yorker. Derek Jeter, I don't know where that man is from. He's from New York. I don't care. He's from New York. I think he's from like, I don't know where that man is from. I want to say something random. Sorry to that man. I don't know where you're from, but you're from New York because of what you did while playing for New York. Teresa Weatherspoon, isn't she from? Where is she from? Is she from?
I don't know.
From like Louisiana or Texas or something like that. She's from New York. You see what I'm saying? Like, I don't care where you're from. I don't care where you were born. When you transcend in the New York market as an athlete, you are from New York. Mike Piazza, he's from New York. He is not from New York. He's from New York. These are the rules. I don't make them. I enforce them. You know, now KT, she keep messing around and liking that Papa John's. I don't know. She might be on the fence. She might be on the fence, KT. I don't know about you, Kayla Thornton. You might need some more time. You're not ready. It's okay. We still love you. But I don't know. But I'm just saying, like, Sabrina Ionescu plays the way she plays like an athlete who is from Becky Hammond. She's from, where is she from?
South
Somewhere.
Dakota.
She is from New York. You know what I'm saying? Like, she's from New York. I don't care. And they will be the first to tell you because they got their butt handed to them while they were in New York. And now they're New Yorkers. Them's the rules. I don't care. He's from, I was going to say Michigan. I was like, but I don't know if that's wrong. But okay, Jackie Styles. Oh, I cannot wait to. Oh, we need to do a deep dive. Okay, I have been making a list. This is completely random, and then I promise we will eventually end this episode. I've been making a list of documentaries about women's sports. Most of them are women's basketball. That's just where I've started, but I'm keeping it to women's sports. And did y'all know there is a Jackie Styles documentary? I just found that out a few months ago. I might be late, but I was excited. I think I found it on like the Roku channel, something really random, and I was like, "Oh my goodness!" And thank you to whoever put that together. I'm so excited. Yeah. So the point I'm trying to make is
Sabrina in New York forever.
Sabrina is from New York. She's not leaving anytime soon. Now, she might go when she gets, as they say in hockey, to the other side of 30. Maybe she wants to go somewhere else. But for right now.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't see her going right now. I feel like while New York has chances for titles, she's staying in New York.
Absolutely.
I don't see her going anywhere else in 5 years, I would say. I think that it would be more towards the end of her career if she wants to be closer to, I don't know. I think that I don't see that as being possible. I do think that could happen, and it would be fun.
We'll see. We will see. Hopefully, no time soon. And after,
no, I don't think anytime
run
soon.
through New York. But I mean, I don't know. I don't know where her next best fit is.
I think Chicago. I would love to see her in Chicago.
So she'd be going back home to Chicago.
Yeah. Yeah,
I mean,
I would love to see
always
her
last. Just ask Candace Parker. I'm just saying.
Yeah. I think she would fit what Chicago is looking for in this future, and with because they're strong in the paint. With Enjo and Camila have a lot to work on. They have a lot to grow. So I think that Juwel being seasoned shooter and someone with more experience, she could help that team a lot. And because she has ties to Chicago, her whole family's there. The cousins wouldn't have to fly to Seattle for cousin night. They will be there every game. I know that the Loyd family is pretty tight knit.
Yeah,
I think it will be good for her also. She is very family oriented. She is family oriented. I see that Money made a question about what would Seattle get in return. I do see. I think I even wrote some notes that I do see Seattle getting picks, and that would free up, let's say, Jewel leaves and Sadie's leaves. That would free their cap.
Yep.
And if they combine, if Sammy, Jewel, and Sadie's leave, they could bring NECA and Gabby for a season before the salaries change. So that could be interesting for them. Let's say they want to offer Skylar. They want to keep Gabby here, and they make her an attractive offer. That trading Juwel Lloyd for picks could be a good way to go. If Sammy goes, if Juwel goes and Sadie's goes, that's a lot of cap space for
Yeah,
Seattle.
but then who do you get though? Because this is a Seattle team that has made it clear that they want to return to the WNBA finals and to winning championships plural. So wiping out, I mean, again, Sadie's and Sammy, I think, are on their way out. I don't know. You have to get something for Juwel. You cannot let Juwel Lloyd walk. Just, I mean, and I don't like they don't have to. Like, it's not like she's a free agent.
No, she's not.
Yeah.
You know, if you're able to keep Gabby Williams, I think that's like for a whole season. I think that goes a long way in that sense.
I just had a diabolical thought.
Oh my God! Please tell us.
Okay, I will share this thought. I'm not saying I'm proud of it, but also I feel like we have made our determination on Gotta Get Up, a podcast for New York Liberty fans. If we absolutely had to choose, not saying that we want to, not saying that we need to right now, but if we had to choose between the magician and the German,
oh,
the tribe has spoken. I'm sorry, MJ. The tribe has spoken, and I adore you. I do. But you know who is the number one fan in the MJ fan club? Gabby Williams. And I'm going to say it that way because that's what I know for fact. So I'm not responding anything beyond that. Gabby Williams has told me on multiple occasions that she is a card-carrying member of the Marine Johannes fan club. Like I said, I'm not going beyond there. Y'all do what you need to do, but don't do it here because I ain't doing that. But the point is, what if the Seattle Storm got MJ? I mean, because let's be honest, Marine Johannes, so I think there's still some ceiling there. There's a lot of growth there.
Mm-hmm.
But dang, she's fun to watch.
Yeah. And I feel that like Leo, she won a championship with the team. You know, like she was in a. I think it's hard to let go of her for Marine, for Johannes in that sense. I would love to watch MJ play in person a whole season. It would be amazing. And I do think
magical, truly.
Yeah, I do think that she would be paid less than Juwel, so that could be a possibility also, you know. And I do think Gabby has said in press conferences with the Storm, she said, "I'm the president of the Marine Johannes."
I know she has. I know. I ask her all the time. She says it all the time. They have the French connection. That would be cool. Oh no, not the magician to Seattle. I'm just saying. I don't know where.
Oh, I would like that.
I don't know where Marine goes. I think she is. I think she still is on a rookie scale. Let's go to stats. But Marine Johannes is she is a talent. I got to see her at the Olympics. I got to see Niara, Leo, Satu. I'm not even going to talk about the Americans because obviously I got to see that. I got to see Emma Meeseman play basketball, and it was fantastic. Ezzy was great, especially in that bronze medal game for Australia. You know who else was really, really good? I mean, Alana Smith was great, but so was Steph Talbot.
She was really good.
Solid.
Yeah.
I mean, there was so much great talent. Now I'm just reminiscing about Paris. You know this because you're a part of the Slack. It was so hard for me to like sit and be like, oh my gosh, I got to do all these cool things while I was in Paris. Like, I'm a very delayed reaction kind of person, but now I'm like, oh my gosh, I really did see all of that amazing basketball.
It's really cool.
Also there was
Gabby and Emma are playing the same team.
Oh my gosh, Emma, bring Emma back immediately.
Mm-hmm.
But
that'd be amazing.
My whole point, and I went down this whole fantasy island. The point is that if you lose Juwel, There's an element from the business aspect, from the basketball aspect. Everyone now, whether you want to call it the Caitlin Clark effect, whether you want to call it the 2024 rookie effect, the point is there's not, if I'm the WNBA and if I'm teams, you don't want to turn back from the eyeballs that want to see compelling, exciting basketball. And the WNBA, I didn't need this past season to sell me. It's been it's been amazing. It's been amazing. And I mean, you have to think, if you're Seattle, how can you also balance an exciting brand of basketball with a winning brand of basketball?
Exactly, because what the Seattle team from the past years, yeah,
we love her in Brooklyn too.
And yeah, that's the thing. It's like you have Sue Bird, but the Storm does need to work on that, and I think Marine Johns could bring that.
Now she doesn't solve all your problems, but she has that chemistry. Her and Gabby work very well together, and again, you kind of have that package deal. They've been working and playing together for the French national team. You bring that alongside a true one in Skylar Diggins-Smith, and I mean the passing. Like, you would love to be Nneka or Ezzy.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Receiving. I mean, entry passes, I don't think are MJ's, like, they're not her bread and butter.
No, she's really good at that.
That being said, the way that she attracts attention, and she's gotten so much better on her passing, her entry passes, like, she's gonna make space for the post down low because of her draw and what she can do. And then you're getting easy buckets around the rim, and that could be winning basketball. So
I could see that. I would love to have that happen. Yeah, I think that there are so many opportunities that the Storm could look into. Maybe it's time for a shake-up,
I know, and I don't think it's what the organization wants to do, but they might need to. If they lose the domino of Juwel Lloyd, and I can't, like we said, they cannot be surprised if and when that happens, and they might even initiate it, but they have to be prepared, and that's perhaps what put Juwel in the situation. And it seems like maybe it's something that the Storm haven't been good at since Sue Bird was around, because even before Sue Bird, I think Lauren Jackson had that thought. Sue Bird had that thought. Stewie made a decision when Sue wasn't coming back, so they need, and I think you see with the facilities there's that draw, but you need to be able to keep it all together. So that's the big question mark for the Seattle Storm. Are they going to be able to pull everything together? Because you don't want to lose Skylar. You don't want to lose Nneka if you don't have to. And again, the writing might already be on the wall when it comes to Juwel. So how do you remedy and prepare this so that you're not doing a rebuild, or what New Yorkers at one point called a hybrid rebuild? If you're Seattle, you want to be as far from any kind of rebuild as possible. But I don't know if that's possible.
No, that's what's like, in terms of finding identity, because they were talking like, last year they were like, no, we are rebuilding. That's why we're losing. We are rebuilding. And then, when you bring Skylar and Nneka, that's not really a rebuild.
You can't say that anymore.
Exactly. No. So you can't say that that's a rebuild, because you have championship elements, and you have to face that, take accountability, and, make it happen.
Yeah. Well, so much we still have to talk about. I can't believe we've been on here for basically 2 hours.
I know.
We just go
also pass by so fast.
I know, it goes by so fast, but we like long form here at Black
Media.
Yep. And we're so grateful for y'all, those who join us every week, those who are now a part of our Slack community. Thank you so much. And we're going to do it again. In 2 weeks, we'll be back with Tempestade Talk, our Seattle Storm podcast, keeping a local eye on the Seattle Storm. Next week, though, we will be recording another episode of Gotta Get Up, a podcast for New York Liberty fans. We already have some of our listeners who are in the chat this week, but if you have questions specific about the New York Liberty, or you want to hear what the East Coast flavor has going on in the WNBA, make sure to tap in. But for Roberta Rodriguez, my name, of course, Erica L. Ayala. We don't have the Ellie wave on this podcast, but we will wave goodbye. We bid you adieu. Buenas noches. Good night. How would you say good night in Portuguese?
Boa noite.
Boa noite.
Boa noite. Yeah.
Boa noite. Boa noite. I got to practice that. Well, good night, good evening, and we'll catch you on the next Black Rosie Media live stream. Good night, everybody. Thank you. No Ellie Wave. Sorry, Aloysius. Join us next week. We'll have it, though. Take care, everybody.